News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A new coal mine in Cumbria, strikes across the land, and 2 MPs suspended in the last 24 hours from their own parties, sitting now as independents. What's going on in British politics? It's all happening, and we're discussing it all here on The Briefing. Well, good morning. It's 9:30, and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Well, last night, Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, approved the Independent Planning Inspectorate's decision to go ahead with a new coal mine in Cumbria. The decision, which had been argued over for years, has been controversial for some. The Shadow Business and Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, responded to the government's approval with this.
Opening a new coal mine marks the death knell for any claims this government has to climate leadership, and it won't provide the sustainable jobs we need. We should be going full pelt for the clean, green jobs of the future. But Rishi Sunak is so weak, being pushed around by his backbenchers, that he just can't deliver.
What a turn up for the books. Are we through the looking glass now? The Labour Party opposing new coal mines and the Conservative Party approving them. It's like the 1980s is standing on its head. Well, let's talk through this decision with Mike Starkey, the Mayor of Copeland in Cumbria. Mike, thank you for joining us this morning. You must be fairly happy with this decision.
absolutely delighted. It's fantastic news for my community and for our area. It's going to bring a huge economic boost, create new opportunities. So yes, I'm absolutely thrilled that we finally got to the right decision.
What do you say to those, for example, in the Labour Party who say that it's the wrong thing to do to open up a new coal mine, that despite the jobs it may bring to the area, the implications for the climate could be disastrous?
It would be interesting what the Labour Party would come to say to all their own supporters who live in my community. I think they'd be appalled that they're taking that view, because in the local area that surrounds that mine, support for this mine is probably in excess of 90% of the population. And it's only a couple of days ago we've had Keir Starmer on the TV talking about devolving power and decisions to local communities. Well, you know, my community's spoken out loud and clear that they want this mine.
Lord Deben, who is a Conservative peer but chairs the sort of independent advisory committee on climate change in the House of Lords, has said that this coal mine is a bad step, that this is a retrograde step in terms of our journey towards net zero. What do you say to that?
I think he's completely wrong. It's, you know, there's coal, there's thermal coal and there's metallurgical coal. And this country, the United Kingdom, we should be singing from the rooftops what a fantastic job we've done in reducing the reliance on thermal coal. And by 2024, by the end of that year, we'll no longer be using thermal coal for energy. This coal that comes out of Whitehaven is metallurgical coal that will be used exclusively for the manufacture of steel. It's a commodity that's still in high demand, and it's the only viable economic way of manufacturing steel.
It's a really, really interesting point. It's something that the Planning Inspectorate itself found. I've got some words here from the independent planning inspector who wrote in the report that I have found that the proposed development itself would have an overall neutral effect on climate change, and as such there would be no material conflict with the government's policies for meeting the challenge of climate change. He continued, I consider that the proposed development would have a broadly neutral effect on the global release of greenhouse gases from coal used in steelmaking, whether or not end-use emissions are taken into account. Now, that's the independent planning inspector. I suppose if the inspector is saying this, if the independent people who've looked into the case are saying this, why then is Ed Miliband and Lord Deben saying the opposite?
Well, they'd need to answer that. To me, it just seems ridiculous. You know, the planning inspector has seen all the evidence. You know, over these last 7 years, you know, people on all sides of this argument have had every opportunity and have took that opportunity to present the case, to present their evidence. And in 3 planning meetings of the local planning committee, the planning inspector and the Secretary of State have all come to the same conclusion, which you've just read out. You know, there should be no controversy surrounding this mine whatsoever. It's a huge economic boost in an area that really needs jobs. And people should be getting the shoulder behind and celebrating the fact that this is a project that's taking place that's funded entirely by private capital. You know, it's not reliant on taxpayer money, government handouts. This is private investors backing their own project with their own cash, and it'll change people's lives in my community for the better.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what it might do for your community. Of course, this private investment going in. How many jobs might this create? What kind of a transformation might this create?
Well, it's going to create 500 jobs directly associated with the mine itself, and they'll be very, very well-paid jobs. But, you know, we estimate that for every 1 job that's created in the mine, it'll create 3 in the supply chain. So you're looking at potentially 2,000 jobs as a result of this mine going ahead. And that is massive in an area like Whitehaven, and it really will be transformational. And, you know, there's going to be the knock-on effects to the hospitality in the area. It's just one real positive economic story.
What do you say to the politicians who, for the last 7 years, have been making this process as protracted as it became for 7 years, calling review after review and stilting this process. We surely can't go through this again as a country.
No, we can't. It sends out all the wrong messages to, when you're trying to attract inward investment from abroad and people to come. The process has been ridiculous. And, I pay a real tribute to the West Cumbria mining team and their investors for sticking with us through this. I and the people I represent really appreciate that they've stuck with the journey and they've finally got to the destination where they're getting everything they deserve now.
Well, Mike Starkey, the Mayor of Copeland in Cumbria, thank you so much for talking through this big decision with us this morning. Really appreciate your time and congratulations to you and your community. Well, moving on today, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak promised yesterday tougher laws to deal with strikes at Prime Minister's questions. He didn't, however, go into the detail of what those laws might be. Let's speculate now with Sam Lister, the political editor of the Daily Express, who joins me now. And Sam, it is interesting listening to the Prime Minister's words at Prime Minister's questions, and then afterwards, when we heard the Prime Minister's spokesman be sort of interrogated on this, they weren't giving much away.
No, and as you say, Tom, we had quite a lengthy discussion, didn't we, a group of journalists after the PMQ session there, to try and get to the bottom of what this tough talking actually meant. And there wasn't really much detail they could give us. But I spent the afternoon ringing around people in government to try and find out a bit more, see where we could get to on this. And actually, what they're certainly doing is looking at all options. Everything's on the table. They use all these phrases. We want to keep a few things in our back pocket in case the unions continue to ramp this up. And what that potentially could mean is that they impose some kind of extension of the measures they're planning for the rail unions onto emergency service workers, such as ambulance workers, who we know are obviously going out on strike later this month. And it was described to me as, if you're going to stop ambulance workers from going on strike, it would seem odd that the ambulances have to take patients to hospitals where nurses could then be on strike. So, if you're going to ban ambulance workers from going on strike, then you've got to kind of ban the people working in the hospitals as well. It doesn't make sense to do one or the other. But I think the reality of this is actually we are a long way from this actually being imposed. It will take a long time to kind of get legislation going. And I think actually the government would rather the unions kind of gave a little bit in the way of compromise, so they weren't kind of having to go down this road.
Yes, I wonder to what extent this might be a bit of an empty threat, perhaps, a bit of a quid pro quo, saying, if you don't withdraw this sort of strike activity, then we will legislate. Because I don't think legislation could actually happen until next year in terms of that parliamentary timetable.
Exactly, and we don't want a whole year of this level of strike action, do we, as a nation? It's going to cause us massive problems. So I think there is a little bit of kind of empty threat about it. But certainly they are looking at ways to kind of get to... And also what you're seeing from government, I was quite struck yesterday by the messages you're getting from people within government. And they are kind of pitching this kind of one worker against another. So you see these kind of... It's kind of parallels between soldiers who are going to be drafted in. The Border Force announced they were going out on strike for 8 days over Christmas, which will affect airports. And so you're going to see soldiers potentially drafted in to cover that 8-day period. And so people in government were saying to me, look, this is not fair. This is why should the squaddies be forced to give up their Christmases to cover the work of other people? And squaddies, of course, can't go out on strike, and they are only getting 3.75% paid this year, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so they're kind of drawing these parallels between it's not fair for our armed forces to have to kind of pick up the slack here when other public sector workers are taking Christmas off on strike.
Yeah, really, really profound consequences for people up and down the country. But moving on now, let's look more introspectively in Westminster, because there have been two remarkable stories about one Conservative MP and one Labour MP over the last 24 hours. Julian Knight, the Conservative MP for Solihull, has had the whip suspended, and indeed Conor McGinn, the Labour MP, has also found the whip suspended from him. Do we know any details as to what's going on here?
Yeah, I think this is the first step that parties take once allegations are made. Although actually, in the case of Julian Knight, it has actually taken them a week or so to take this decision as a party. Obviously, certain allegations have been made about the behaviour of both these men in different parties, and obviously, I wouldn't want to kind of speculate on the ins and outs of that because until the investigations are carried out, it seems unfair to me on everyone involved to kind of speculate on that. But what I would just point out is, I just checked before I came on air, Tom, and we now have 14 independent MPs. It's one more than the number of 15 independent MPs, one more than the number of Lib Dem MPs. There are more people sitting as an independent now than there are as Lib Dems, and that is for a whole range of bad behaviour. Some of it involving allegations about sexual misconduct, allegations about bullying. There's a whole range of kind of reprobate's corner, really, if you will, there in Parliament. And it's quite a big group now. And it doesn't reflect well on Parliament, and this spans across all parties. It's not certainly not limited to the Conservatives, but it doesn't reflect well on Parliament as a whole when you've got so many people facing allegations of serious natures.
It is interesting. This does seem to me to be the first time that the Conservative Party under Rishi Sunak has proactively taken the whip away from a Member of Parliament. Beforehand, of course, we saw different levels of I suppose Matt Hancock had the whip proactively taken away from him, obviously for different reasons. But of course, when it came to people like Gavin Williamson, the whip was taken off himself. I wonder, are we seeing the Conservative Party getting tougher now, perhaps? Is it wanting to lean in more to this sort of tough reputation? The Labour Party, too, I suppose, acting swiftly with regard to those allegations.
Yeah, it's always very difficult, isn't it? Because for a party, parties are like any kind of band of people where you try and naturally kind of stick together, don't you? But obviously, when allegations of a serious nature come along, you have to act, because otherwise, it's just that the public will be appalled if people are protecting people who've done terrible things. But on the kind of more political side of it, the Gavin Williamsons, Matt Hancocks, all that kind of thing, I think there is a reluctance to throw the other side a scalp, if you will. So they don't really want to have to kind of withdraw the whip for things they don't have to. It kind of plays into the other side's hands, really. And certainly when you're a new government, Rishi Sunak, I mean, he's only been in post, matter of weeks, really, and already we've seen a number of people lose the whip. It's not a great place for a Prime Minister to be. And you are stuck in that thing of obviously not wanting to give the other side a win, but also wanting to look tough. So you can be a bit damned if you do, damned if you don't, really, on some of these decisions.
And I suppose through all of it, we must remember innocent until proven guilty, but clearly looking at 15 independent members of Parliament now, this is really quite, in recent times at least, unprecedented. Sam Lister, thank you so much for joining us this morning on The Briefing. Really, really important stories to discuss there. Next today, however, Labour is announcing its ambition for bold thinking to make Britain what it describes as a high-growth start-up hub of the world. They're launching their results of the review Start Up, Scale Up to an audience of business leaders in Canary Wharf. Well, I'm joined now by Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. And Peter, is it a big sort of tanks on your lawn moment for the Labour Party to go to Canary Wharf to announce this new the results of this paper to an audience of business leaders?
No, I wouldn't put it quite like that. Of course, there'll be a flurry of policies today, and there's a small business paper coming out. But really, it's a much wider message that Labour is at Canary Wharf, as you say, engaging with business. It's ahead in the polls. It's seen by the public as a credible party of government. And in reality, the businesses actually want to talk to Labour and influence its thinking. And I think that's the point, really. And yes, there'll be a lot of detailed announcements, but the message, I'd imagine the Shadow Cabinet will be quite happy to go out, is that Labour are meeting businesses and just feeling like they're on the same page. There's none of the slightly adversarial tone that we've seen from Labour occasionally in the past decade. And similarly, businesses feel they've run out of road with the Conservative government.
I suppose there'll be those who are thinking that this is quite a sort of Blairite strategy, that this is Labour really leaning into that sort of centre ground, so to speak, that really when it comes to genuine policy differences, there's now not much room at all between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party.
Well, I wouldn't take that view at all. In reality, every Labour opposition in the run-up to election will have a big meeting of business. I remember working for a shadow cabinet minister in around 2014 and 2015, and Ed Miliband did something very similar with Ed Balls and Rachel Reeves and Chris Leslie and Chuka Umunna and so on. So the idea that you get anyone with an economic portfolio together in the same room as business, and business can give constructive feedback and also get a bit more of an inkling of what Labour might do on a policy detail if it's elected. It's actually a rite of passage, and I'm sure when the Conservatives were in opposition before a general election, they also did a lot of engagement in the public sector. So it's not tanks on your lawn. It is a point about maybe engaging with a part of the economy where you're traditionally seen as having less closer ties to. And of course, the choice of location, as you mentioned, Canary Wharf, a creature of the 80s, but also very much a technology hub today, speaks for itself symbolically.
I suppose when we're looking at policy terms, what are we expecting to see being announced today by the Labour Party? Is it going to be more broad brushstroke? Or are we going to get into the detail of policy? Because this party leadership has been criticised over the last few years of not being so proactive in terms of laying out specific policy. Keir Starmer's one of his favourite catchphrases is, "I'm not going to write the manifesto before you today." Are we going to see some of that manifesto?
Well, I'm sure we will. We'll see a bit of it. But in reality, that's a political challenge facing every leader of the opposition, and why the role is half-jokingly called the worst job in politics or the worst job in the country. Because if you have what seems a good idea, like the energy windfall tax, that will be taken by the government. And if you have what's seen as a bad idea, that will be hung around your neck. But to go to Keir Starmer, I think he's gone through three phases, because he spent the first year or so trying to sort out the Labour Party, banish the spectre of some of the problems in the past and ensure that it's a happy place to be an activist. He then brought back lots of big shadow cabinet figures and opposed Boris Johnson very effectively. And now, as you see, we're in this kind of third phase of the policy rollout and going from being a good opposition to actually an alternative government. And that's completely what today is about.
Indeed. For now, Peter Edwards, thank you very much for joining us here on The Briefing this morning. Finally, today, after his stint on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, former Health Secretary Matt Hancock says that he won't be standing as a Conservative MP in the next general election. He made his announcement as some local party members said he's not fit to represent them.
It's been a huge privilege to serve in Parliament and to serve the people of West Suffolk, and I'm incredibly grateful to everybody who's supported me both in Suffolk and in government since then. I've increasingly come to the view that it's so important to engage with people about politics, about how our country is run, not just through Parliament, but also through new and innovative ways, and I look forward to doing more of that.
Well, Matt Hancock speaking there on TikTok. And our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins us now from Newmarket in West Suffolk, Matt Hancock's constituency, of course. And Darren, does this mean we're going to see a lot more of Matt Hancock on various reality TV shows?
We are promised, Tom, maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing for some viewers out there. We are promised, no, we're not going to see him on Strictly Come Dancing or take part in Dancing on Ice or indeed any other reality TV shows, The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent. No, he is going to commit himself now to the Commons as a constituent MP, but not as a Conservative MP, because I think it's pretty unlikely now the whip will be returned to Matt Hancock. There had been suggestions that would happen. It was only a matter of days ago, though, Tom, we were told by him and his spokespeople that he was going to stand at the next election. But as you've rightly alluded to there, it seems that he has walked before he was pushed, i.e. There was a meeting at the end of November amongst his Conservative membership here in his constituency in Newmarket, and they essentially concluded that they didn't have any confidence in Matt Hancock anymore, that he was not fit to be their MP, and that, frankly, he was probably going to be deselected. So he's decided to walk away from Parliament. Now, he's been the MP here for, 13 years or so. He will stay MP until the next election, which could be 2 years away. And, he's had a pretty kind of turbulent political career in some degrees. He rose through the ranks pretty quickly, becoming a cabinet minister, around the age of 40 years old. Clearly, he was a massive influence on policy as Health Secretary during the COVID crisis. He had backed Rishi Sunak for the leadership, but it's clear that they thought, the current government, there was no role for him to be had. He went off, obviously, to I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Clearly did quite well, enduring all sorts of horrendous feats in the jungle, but there was a sense that actually that was the marker of the end of his political career. The big question is, what does he do next? Is he going to leave politics altogether? Because clearly some people have made it clear you can continue to be a politician. There are other jobs outside of Parliament in politics, or he's going to take on a different role. All I would say, you and I know Matt reasonably well, Tom. I think it's fair to say he's got a bit of an ego. I do not think, in the end, this is the last we've heard of Matt Hancock in public life.
No, I wonder if there are going to be more MPs sort of thinking along this line, that if Matt Hancock can make £400,000 in one series of I'm a Celebrity, if he can come third with perhaps more love in that series than he ever received as a politician, might more people be thinking that actually the sort of grass is greener outside of Parliament?
Yeah, I think, there is a constant gripe from lots of MPs that, despite the public perception of them, they do work incredibly hard. Many of them would argue that they could earn lots more money in different sectors in society. They're clearly massively scrutinised. You've been reporting on disciplinary measures against MPs. It's very rare that in any other profession that makes national news headlines. And so, yes, I think for lots of MPs, actually, they have thought about life outside of politics, what they do, could they earn more money? Let's say, look at Diana Davison, for example, only elected to the Conservative Party in 2019. Someone who's now a minister should be someone who'd be focusing on the career potentially in Parliament, becoming a cabinet minister at some point in the future. But she's decided actually to walk away, deciding that she wants to, in many ways, rebalance her life outside of politics. And given the fact, I think, for particularly the Conservative Party, they're in a sticky situation going to the next election, Matt Hancock may not be the only MP in the weeks, months, and indeed years to come who will decide not to stand at the next election.
Well, one to watch very closely. For now, Darren, live from Newmarket. Thank you very much for joining us here on The Briefing. That's it from us today. Thank you for your company. And up next, it's Bev Turner with Bev Turner.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. We have issued yellow weather warnings covering ice and across northern Scotland, some snow for the next couple of days. Because it's from the north, if you follow the isobars, that's where our air is coming from, northerly winds. Meaning a frosty start for the vast majority this morning. Say potentially a slippery start as well. Wherever we've got any showers with that cold air and the cold ground, it could be icy. Parts of Northern Ireland, Wales, southwest England and eastern England too. And snow showers still coming in across northern Scotland. For many, it's a sunny day today, but it will be cold. And later on, a bit more cloud coming into southeast Scotland, northeast England. That is going to bring more in the way of wet weather, a wintry mix with some snow likely, especially over hills. Temperatures 2 or 3 for the vast majority at best. For much of the day, we're going to be struggling around or below freezing. Just that little area of wet weather coming into northeast England this evening needs to be watched, could provide a covering of snow. Certainly there'll be some over the North York moors. And again, wherever we've got any kind of shower, be it rain, sleet or snow, it could turn icy, and certainly more snow showers continuing through the night across northern Scotland. Again, a frosty one tonight, temperatures down to -2, -3, -4, even in towns and cities, and lower in rural spots. Friday, again, potentially icy where we've got some showers. The showers over West Wales, perhaps southwest England, Northern Ireland, some snow here over the hills. The wind's a bit lighter perhaps on Friday, but still strong enough to blow more snow showers over northern Scotland. Again, for the vast majority, tomorrow will just be crisp, sunny and cold, with temperatures struggling to get much above 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. Doesn't get any warmer through the weekend. It stays cold, frosty, further wintry showers, therefore a continued ice risk. Sunny spells, but also some freezing fog. Keep up to date with those warnings on the Met Office website.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights,